Imagine this. You spend centuries climbing a mountain, generation after generation, sacrificing, building, discovering. You invent science, master nature, connect every corner of the world in milliseconds, and at the top, expecting enlightenment, expecting peace, you find noise, anxiety, disconnection, and despair. They told you that progress was a straight line, that more technology, more knowledge, more control would lead to a better world, that if we just knew more, we'd suffer less. But what if they were wrong? What if the very idea of progress, of more, is the myth that's making us miserable? We live in the most informed era in human history, but we are lonelier, more depressed, and more distracted than ever. We chase efficiency but lose meaning. We value intelligence over wisdom. We are flooded with facts and starving for truth. This isn't a new problem. Philosophers like Socrates, Nietzsche, and even modern critics like Theodore Roszak and Neil Postman saw it coming. They warned us that knowledge without wisdom is dangerous, that information can be a prison if it's not guided by reflection, humility, and purpose. In this video, we'll dive into the core of that warning. We'll explore why the myth of progress, when left unexamined, leads us to confuse advancement with fulfillment, and why the pursuit of knowledge alone may be pushing us further away from the very things that make life worth living. We'll look at the ancient idea of phronesis, practical wisdom, and why it's been lost in the age of algorithms. We'll question whether our addiction to data has left us blind to deeper truths. And we'll confront a hard truth. Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. By the end of this journey, you'll see why stepping off the treadmill of endless improvement might be the wisest move of all. Not to go backward, but to go deeper, to rediscover what it means to live well, not just efficiently. Are you ready to question the very foundation of everything you've been told about progress? Modern life promises us clarity, instant answers, constant updates. We are taught that with more data, we'll make better decisions, that with more access to knowledge, we'll become wiser, stronger, more fulfilled. But Michel Foucault once warned, knowledge is not neutral, it's power, and power always comes with a cost. As we accumulate more information, we don't necessarily become freer. We become more entangled. We become dependent on systems, algorithms, and the illusion that certainty is just one more search away. We mistake noise for insight, trends for truth, and slowly, without noticing, we outsource our thinking to machines, our values to popularity, and our sense of direction to the next notification. But here's the contradiction. The more we know, the less we seem to understand. Why? Because understanding requires stillness. It requires time. It requires discomfort. But our age of acceleration leaves no space for that. We scroll instead of reflect. We consume instead of contemplate. Philosophers throughout history have echoed this danger. Socrates feared writing would kill memory. Heidegger warned that technology might alienate us from being. And Postman argued that television, and now the internet, turns everything into entertainment, even our search for meaning. They weren't anti-knowledge. They were anti-disconnected knowledge. Knowledge without depth, wisdom, or ethical grounding. Think about it. When was the last time you sat with a question and didn't Google it? When was the last time you let uncertainty be a teacher rather than a problem to be solved? We become allergic to not knowing, but some of the most profound wisdom begins there, in mystery, in silence, in accepting limits. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop obsessing over always knowing, over always being right or updated or productive, you unlock something deeper. You become wiser, because wisdom isn't about having more. It's about needing less. It's about seeing clearly, not just collecting facts. It's about living deliberately, not just efficiently. So what if the goal isn't to know more, but to unlearn what no longer serves us? What if progress isn't measured in speed or output, but in the courage to slow down, reflect, and choose what really matters? This is where the myth of progress unravels, and where real clarity begins. Montaigne believed that true liberation begins the moment you recognize the invisible cage you've been living in. The cage built from expectations, achievements, and an obsessive need to always be improving. And once you see the bars for what they are, you realize something revolutionary. You were never trapped by the world. You were trapped by the idea of progress itself. The myth of progress tells us that life is a race, that you are always behind, always needing to do more, know more, become more. But what if that belief is the very thing holding you back from peace, from clarity, from meaning? When you let go of that illusion, everything shifts. Relationships become more honest because you're no longer performing. Choices become more grounded because you stop asking, "What's the smartest move?" and start asking, "What actually matters to me?" Your time, energy, and focus stop being devoured by the next trend, the next upgrade, the next illusion of certainty, and start being rooted in presence. This is not about giving up, it's about waking up. Waking up to the truth that not every new discovery makes us wiser, that not every advancement is progress, that sometimes slowing down, turning inward, and asking why is more powerful than rushing forward to ask what next. How often have you hesitated to disconnect from the news, from social media, from the pressure to always be in the know because you were afraid of falling behind? How often do you measure your life against standards that have nothing to do with your values? How many of your thoughts, your fears, your ambitions are really yours? This is what the philosophy of anti-progress asks us to confront. That maybe, just maybe, wisdom begins when the chase ends. When you stop sprinting towards some imagined finish line and start listening to the still, quiet voice within you. The one that's been drowned out by noise for far too long. And this is just the beginning. Because as we go deeper, we'll explore how to rebuild your mindset, how to unplug from the myth of more, reconnect with purpose, and reclaim the lost art of living with intention. Because the greatest progress you can make is realizing that you never had to chase it in the first place. In a world obsessed with constant progress, we've forgotten how to sit still. We've forgotten how to be. Always planning, optimizing, consuming, constantly striving to be better, smarter, more informed. But at what cost? We've built a society that worships control and fears uncertainty. And in that worship, we've lost something vital, the ability to accept the unknown. Think about it. How much of your stress comes not from what is actually happening, but from your mind trying to anticipate, fix, or outthink the future? We've been taught to believe that every problem has a solution, every feeling a diagnosis, every doubt an answer waiting online. But ancient and modern philosophers alike remind us of a truth we keep forgetting. Not everything is meant to be solved. Some things are meant to be lived through. The thinkers who warned us about the myth of progress, like Kierkegaard, Camus, even Lao Tzu, understood that the more we try to master the future, the more we suffer in the present. That freedom doesn't come from having control, it comes from releasing the need for it. So what does this mean for you? It means you don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need a 5-year plan or a perfectly optimized life. Because chasing that kind of control is a trap. We bend ourselves out of shape trying to be understood, admired, validated. But the world is not obligated to understand you. And that's not a failure. That's freedom. The freedom to speak without needing applause, to choose without seeking permission, to exist without performing. When you stop measuring your value by how much you achieve, how much you know, or how much you please others, you begin to live. You start to see how many of your anxieties were born not from reality, but from expectations, most of which were never yours to begin with. This isn't about giving up your ambition, it's about redirecting it toward what truly matters, toward peace, purpose, presence. Because here's the paradox. When you let go of the need to control everything, you gain access to something far more powerful, clarity. And from that clarity, you'll begin to make better choices, not because you're trying harder, but because you're finally free from the noise. And Montaigne, like many wise voices before and after him, knew this. A meaningful life isn't built by knowing everything. It's built by knowing what's enough. The myth of progress has taught us to grip tightly, to treat life like a project to be managed, perfected, and optimized. But the harder we cling to control, the more fragile we become. One glitch, one failure, one unpredictable twist, and the entire illusion starts to crack. That's because real life doesn't follow our scripts. It resists neat formulas. And the pursuit of total control, disguised as progress, quietly becomes a form of self-torture. Philosophers from Montaigne to Alan Watts have warned us, chasing certainty in an uncertain world is a recipe for anxiety, and yet modern life keeps feeding us the same lie, that if we just try harder, work smarter, gather more knowledge, we'll finally reach peace. But peace isn't found at the end of effort, it's found in surrender. What if you stopped treating uncertainty as a threat and started seeing it as space? Space for growth, for creativity, for something unplanned and beautiful to enter. What if, instead of constantly trying to force outcomes, you allowed life to surprise you? The people who appear the most grounded, the most successful, are often not the ones who control the most. They are the ones who've let go the most. They aren't immune to failure, they've just stopped fearing it. They aren't desperate for approval, they've made peace with being misunderstood. And that peace, that quiet confidence, is what draws people in. Not noise, not perfection, but presence. We often believe that letting go will make us weaker, that if we stop striving, we'll fall behind. But the opposite is true. When you let go of what doesn't matter, you gain clarity on what does. You stop scattering your energy and start directing it. That's not passivity, it's power. Letting go doesn't mean giving up on your goals. It means giving up the illusion that your worth is tied to how fast you achieve them. It means learning to move with life rather than against it. To accept setbacks not as failures, but as part of the rhythm. To understand that wisdom doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from knowing what's enough. And this is the heart of rejecting the myth of progress. It's not about going backward, it's about stepping out of the race entirely. Not to escape life, but to finally live it on your own terms. Because once you stop clinging to the illusion of control, you don't lose yourself, you find yourself. And yet we cling. Cling to control, to outcomes, to the illusion that if we just care enough, we can bend life to our will. But here's the truth Montaigne and many other great thinkers understood. The tighter your grip, the more life slips through your fingers. This is the quiet tragedy of modern life. We're taught to chase success, knowledge, status, believing that more is always the answer. More data, more precision, more strategy. But what if more is the problem? What if, in trying to know everything, fix everything, and predict everything, we've lost our most human capacities? Patience, presence, humility. We've been led to believe that detachment is cold, that letting go means not caring. But the opposite is true. When you let go of control, you finally make space for connection. Not superficial connection built on approval or performance, but real connection, honest, grounded, and free. Think about the people in your life you feel closest to. Are they the ones who are always trying to impress you? Or are they the ones who are simply themselves, open, imperfect, present? That's the paradox Montaigne pointed to. When you stop clinging to control, you become more available to the world, not less. More available to love, to empathy, to truth. And this is where the myth of progress starts to fall apart. Because in its pursuit of constant improvement, it teaches us to treat people, including ourselves, as projects. Always fixing, always optimizing, never being. But wisdom doesn't come from endlessly adding. It comes from subtracting what no longer serves. Letting go of roles you never chose, beliefs you never questioned, expectations you never agreed to. And when you do that, you begin to return to something much older and deeper than progress. You return to presence, to silence, to simplicity, the kind of wisdom that doesn't need to prove itself. The kind that isn't loud or flashy, but unshakable. And Montaigne's philosophy invites us to build our lives from this place, not in rebellion against the world, but in alignment with what's real. In the next part, we'll explore how this mindset shifts the way you work, create, and move through the world. Because once you embrace the power of less, you begin to unlock the freedom to do more, with meaning. How often do you find yourself spiraling into self-doubt, frustration, or resentment, simply because someone didn't respond the way you hoped they would? Montaigne would argue that this is not a reflection of them, but of us. A mirror showing us the places within ourselves where we still crave control, still depend on others to regulate our inner world. This is the trap built into the myth of progress. It tells us that with enough effort, we can perfect not just our lives, but our relationships too. That people can be improved like systems, optimized like machines. But human beings are not projects. They are unpredictable, emotional, contradictory, and that's precisely what makes connection so meaningful. Montaigne invites us to stop managing people and start meeting them as they are. You can't demand love and expect it to flourish. You can't script closeness and call it intimacy. You can't manipulate connection and still call it real. The more you try to control the emotional responses of others, the less room there is for authenticity. But when you release the need to be understood at all times, when you stop expecting others to behave a certain way just to make you feel safe, you allow a new kind of relationship to emerge. One built not on need, but on presence. And here's the paradox again. The moment you stop needing someone to validate you, they often become more open, more honest, more connected to you. Because detachment is not emotional coldness, it's emotional clarity. It means you're no longer holding people hostage to your expectations. You're letting them be who they are, and in doing so, you give yourself the same permission. This is what Montaigne meant when he said that self-knowledge is the foundation of all other knowledge. When you understand your own needs, your own fears, your own illusions, you stop projecting them onto everyone else. You stop needing others to fix what you haven't yet faced in yourself. And that shift, quiet, subtle, but powerful, begins to change everything. Not just your relationships, but your energy, your peace, your ability to move through the world without clinging, without grasping, without fear. In the next part, we'll explore what this inner stability looks like in action, and how, by turning inward, you unlock a kind of wisdom that no amount of external progress can ever replace. You finally start paying attention to the things that do, and that is where everything begins to change, not through force, but through clarity. Because here's what Montaigne understood better than most. Clarity is not found in knowing more, but in needing less. Our obsession with accumulating knowledge, opinions, status has done little to make us wiser. In fact, it often clouds our ability to see what's right in front of us. We mistake complexity for intelligence, busyness for progress, and control for safety. But what if real wisdom is something else entirely? What if wisdom is the ability to sit with silence, to accept contradiction, to be still in the face of the unknown? Modern life pushes us in the opposite direction, toward more stimulation, more certainty, more answers. But Montaigne's philosophy pulls us gently back to center. It teaches us to ask the deeper questions. What actually brings peace? What gives your life meaning when all the noise is stripped away? Letting go is not about abandoning effort. It's about being intentional with your effort. It's about moving through life with purpose rather than panic. Because when you stop wasting energy on what doesn't matter, on chasing opinions, controlling outcomes, and proving yourself, you have more to give to what does matter. Your growth, your relationships, your art, your presence. And here's where the myth of progress shatters. Because progress without reflection isn't growth, it's just momentum. We move faster, but understand less. We learn more, but feel less. We gather information, but lose connection to ourselves and to the world. Montaigne's wisdom is a call to return, to slow down, to clear away the clutter, not just on your desk, but in your mind. To ask, what am I doing all this for? And more importantly, who am I becoming in the process? In the final part of this journey, we'll uncover how embracing this philosophy doesn't just change how you think, it changes how you live. It's not a retreat from life, it's a re-entry into it, with greater depth, freedom, and clarity than you ever thought possible. Montaigne's philosophy is not a call to give up, it's a call to let go. It's not about abandoning your goals, your dreams, or your ambitions. It's about freeing yourself from the need to control the outcome, to predict the future, or to live up to expectations that don't belong to you. What he teaches us is simple but profound. Clarity, freedom, and fulfillment come when we stop grasping so tightly. Think about your own life. When were you happiest? When were you at your most creative, your most alive? Chances are it wasn't when you were obsessing over the smallest details or trying to control every outcome. It was when you stopped forcing things and let life unfold as it is. The moments that truly matter, the ones that stick with you, are often the ones that you didn't plan. The moments that surprised you, the ones that happened when you were finally present. Consider the artist who stops worrying about commercial success and just creates for the sake of creation. That freedom leads to the kind of art that speaks to people. Think about the entrepreneur who finally lets go of the fear of failure and takes a leap of faith, only to disrupt an entire industry. Or the person who finally stops chasing love and in that moment of self-acceptance finds exactly what they've been looking for, effortlessly. This is the paradox Montaigne understood. When you release your grip, when you stop trying to control, what you need often finds its way to you, more naturally, more beautifully, and in ways you never could have planned. Montaigne reminds us that life is not a constant battle. Yes, it will throw challenges our way. Yes, there will be pain and uncertainty. But when you stop fighting against life's flow, when you stop obsessing over every detail, you start to experience the magic of being alive. You begin to realize that the struggle itself is what causes suffering, your resistance to life's imperfections. Life will never be perfect, and thank goodness for that. It's in the chaos, in the unpredictability, that we find meaning. When you stop trying to control everything, when you let go of your need for constant validation, something amazing happens. You become free. You become confident in a way that doesn't need to be approved by anyone else. You stop fearing failure, because failure no longer has the power to define you. And as a result, you become unstoppable. Montaigne understood this centuries ago. Wisdom isn't in conquering life, it's in learning how to dance with it. It's in accepting that we don't have to know everything, we don't have to control everything, and we don't have to have all the answers. Because in the end, the beauty of life lies in its uncertainty. So ask yourself, what can you let go of today? What unnecessary weight have you been carrying around, mentally, emotionally, that no longer serves you? And imagine how your life could change if you simply trusted that things will fall into place, just as they're meant to. Because here's the truth. When you stop caring about the wrong things, the right things have space to find their way to you. And that is the true power of Montaigne's philosophy. Thanks for listening.